She was sold for half a bottle of whiskey until a cowboy paid full price with his heart. The first sound Della Rose remembered was the slam of a bottle on a warped saloon counter. Dust swirled in shafts of lantern light, and men's laughter carried sharp as whip cracks. "Half a bottle," the ranch hand drawled, setting down his claim with the care of a man who knew the saloon keeper's thirst. "That'll settle it." Behind him, Della stood stiff, her thin calico dress clinging with travel sweat. At her side, Tommy clutched her hand, 8 years old, cheeks streaked with dust, eyes round as a frightened colt's. The boy's lips trembled. Della squeezed his fingers, trying to pour courage she didn't have into his small bones. Half a bottle for the both? The saloon keeper squinted, his beard oily with grease. He looked her up and down like she was horseflesh. "That ain't near fair." The ranch hand smirked. "She's not worth more, not with a kid tagging along." Della's stomach twisted. Her pa had left them in debt so deep the banker had laughed when she asked for mercy. The neighbors turned their backs. She'd come west thinking she could work her way free. Instead, she'd been reduced to a bargain cheaper than a saddle cinch. When the cork popped, Tommy whimpered. Della bent, whispering against his hair. "Hush, love. I won't let them hurt you." The promise scalded her throat because she didn't know how she'd keep it. The men closed in, shadows of spurs and broad shoulders blotting her view. Laughter rattled against the saloon's smoke-stained rafters. Someone tugged her sleeve. She flinched, straightened, and snapped, "Don't touch me." The saloon quieted a beat. Then came more laughter, crueler this time. "Feisty for a whiskey girl," one muttered. She tried to stand taller, though her knees shook. She had no gun, no money, no kin. Only Tommy. Only her word that she'd keep him safe. But in that moment, surrounded by jeers, she felt as powerless as a tumbleweed caught in a storm. A chair scraped behind her. Boots crossed the floor, heavy and sure. "That'll do." The voice was low, steady as the prairie horizon. A man stepped forward. Broad hat shadowing eyes the color of riverstone, dust on his long duster, a revolver at his hip. He laid a silver dollar on the counter with a metallic ring that silenced the room. Then another. Then another, until a full row of coins gleamed under the lantern. "Whiskey's not what's being bought here," he said. "I'll pay in full." Della turned, breath caught. For the first time that night, someone wasn't laughing at her. Tommy's fingers tightened in hers. His small whisper rose through the hush. "Is he ours now?" Della blinked hard, ashamed of the heat in her eyes. Whoever this stranger was, he'd shifted the air in the room. She felt the weight of choice again, faint, but alive. Cole Hart didn't say another word as he tipped his hat and placed his body between Della and the men. His silence carried weight, the kind that made even drunken cowhands think twice. He gathered the coins into the saloon keeper's hand, ignoring the muttered curses about showboating cowboys. Then he turned, eyes level with Della's. "You're coming with me. If you want to," he added softly, as if the choice mattered more than the dust on his boots or the eyes boring into their backs. Della swallowed hard. Her throat was raw from fear, but she found her voice. "And if I don't?" Cole's jaw worked once. Then he said, "Then you walk out that door on your own and I'll make sure no one follows, but the boy looks hungry and I've got bread. Back at the cabin." Tommy tugged her sleeve at the mention of food. His eyes pleaded. She hated herself for hesitating, for letting hunger sway her heart, but the warmth in Cole's tone was unlike anything she'd heard in months. The ranch hand who had offered the whiskey spat on the floor. "Cowboys wasting good silver on a woman already spoken for." Cole turned slow, like a storm gathering in the distance. "She ain't spoken for unless she says she is." His hand drifted near his revolver, not touching it, just resting there like a promise. The room stilled again. Men looked away, muttering into their mugs. Della realized her breath was coming fast. Her shoulders braced for blows that hadn't come. She glanced at Tommy, then at Cole's broad frame, and nodded. "We'll come." He walked them out under the cracked porch lantern. The night smelled of horses and sage. Cole lifted Tommy onto his bay gelding first, then offered Della his hand. She hesitated, then placed her palm against his calloused grip. The strength there steadied her. The ride out of town was quiet, but heavy with unspoken things. Moonlight silvered the plains, and the only sound was the horse's hooves and Tommy's soft breathing where he dozed against her side. Della clutched him, wondering if she'd just traded one trap for another. Cole finally broke the silence. "I don't want anything from you, Della, not unless you give it. I just couldn't watch them bargain your worth like that." His voice carried a raw edge, a man speaking more truth than comfort. She wanted to believe him, wanted to think a stranger could mean kindness, but her heart was a locked chest, battered too many times. Still, when the cabin came into view, small, humble, with lamplight glowing faintly through the shutters, something inside her stirred. Safety, however fleeting, was within reach. Cole dismounted and offered his hand again. "You can stay the night. That's all. Tomorrow's yours to choose." Della stepped down, clutching Tommy to her chest, and for the first time since her father's debts had buried them, she dared to think she might still have choices left in this world. Morning in Cole Hart's cabin came soft, with the creak of timbers and the smell of coffee on the stove. Della woke to Tommy's small weight tucked against her side on a bed far warmer than the barn lofts they'd been used to. The quilt was patched but clean, stitched with care. She touched the seams, wondering who had sewn them. Some woman who had once held Cole's heart, maybe. In the kitchen corner, Cole moved with quiet purpose, ladling oats into bowls. "Food's hot," he said, without turning. His voice carried. No demand, only invitation. Tommy scrambled up first, eyes alight at the sight of real breakfast. Della followed slower, cautious. She waited for the catch, for him to name his price. But all Cole did was set bowls on the table and pour milk with steady hands. After Tommy had eaten 2 helpings and dashed outside to explore, Della stayed, fingers twisting in her lap. "Why?" she asked finally. "Why do this for us?" Cole sat back in his chair, eyes resting on the window where the prairie stretched endless. "Because no one did it for my ma. She deserved better than the hand she was dealt. I figure I can't change her story, but I can do right by someone else's." The words lodged deep in her chest. She didn't reply. Instead, she found herself rising to clear the dishes, needing to do something with her restless hands. Later, she stepped outside, drawn to the patch of dirt near the porch where green shoots poked through. A small garden, beans climbing a frame, squash pushing broad leaves, wildflowers scattered at the edges. She knelt, touching the soil. Something in its quiet order calmed her. By afternoon, she'd rolled up her sleeves and begun weeding. Tommy helped, though more weeds ended up in his hair than in the basket. Cole passed by, carrying a pail of water, and gave her a nod of thanks, nothing more. It was respect in its simplest form, letting her choose how to belong. That evening, with Tommy asleep by the hearth, Della sat at the small table and pulled out scraps of paper from her satchel. Her handwriting trembled as she began a letter. "Pa, if you could see me now." She wrote of the saloon, of Tommy's hunger, of a stranger's unexpected mercy. She would never send it. Her father was long in the ground, but the words spilled like confession. Cole returned from the barn and noticed. He didn't ask to read. He only set a lantern beside her so the light caught her face and her ink strokes clear. "Paper's cheap here," he said. "You can write as many as you need." But peace was fragile. At the general store, whispers. Already stirred, Rand Pike, the ranch hand with the whiskey bargain, had sworn he wasn't finished. Della overheard it herself while buying flour. He'll come back for what's his. The garden's calm could not smother the old fear, rising. She folded her letters tighter, her heart bracing for the storm she knew was coming. The storm came sooner than Della expected. The sky darkened with dust as Rand Pike rode into the yard, flanked by two men whose faces carried the smugness of those used to taking what they pleased. Tommy froze on the porch steps, his wooden toy horse dangling forgotten in his hand. Rand swung off his saddle, boots thudding. "You thought you could walk away?" he sneered. "You and the brat belong to me. I paid fair as anyone." His gaze slid over Della like a brand. Cole stepped from the barn, slow and steady, wiping his palms on a rag. His revolver glinted at his hip, but his voice was calm. "She doesn't belong to anyone. She chose to leave." Rand barked a laugh. "Chose? Women don't get to choose when whiskey's on the table. Hand her over or things get ugly." Della's pulse roared in her ears. Her first instinct was to grab Tommy and run into the prairie until her lungs burst. But where would she go? She'd been running all her life. Her eyes darted to Cole, who stood firm, rooted as if the earth itself braced him. He wasn't speaking for her. He was standing with her. The difference seared through her. She found her voice, brittle but sharp. "I'm not yours, Rand. Not for whiskey, not for silver, not for anything. And you'll not lay a hand on my brother." Rand's jaw clenched, and he gestured. The two men fanned out, hands twitching near their belts. Tommy whimpered, pressing into her skirts. Della tightened her grip on him and straightened. Cole's eyes flicked to her, steady and asking, without words, "Stand or flee?" Her answer came when she set Tommy behind her and faced Rand head-on. "If you want me," she said, voice cracking but loud, "you'll have to drag me through the dirt in front of every eye in this town. And I'll scream your shame so loud even the hills will hear it." Rand spat, fury twisting his features. "You'll regret crossing me." He drew his pistol. Cole moved then, quick as lightning, revolver clearing leather in a blur. His shot struck the dirt at Rand's boots, kicking dust into the man's face. The second hired hand froze, hands half raised. But before Cole could fire again, Della stepped forward, holding her ground with nothing but her trembling frame and her will. "No more," she said. "You won't own me, Rand. Not now. Not ever." The storm of silence that followed broke something. Rand faltered. Maybe it was the steel in her eyes, maybe the weight of Cole's steady gun. He cursed, swung back onto his horse, and jerked his head. His men followed, grumbling. When the dust settled, Della's knees buckled. Cole was at her side, catching her elbow. Tommy buried his face against her waist. "You didn't run," Cole murmured. Her breath came in shudders, but she lifted her chin. "I'm tired of running." And though the prairie wind still carried echoes of Rand's threats, something inside her shifted. Fear was giving way to defiance, and with Cole's quiet presence beside her, she wasn't alone in the fight anymore. The next Sunday, the town gathered for market day. Wagons lined the dusty street, women bartered over flour and seed, children chased one another through horse-trodden alleys. Della felt the weight of eyes follow her as she stepped down from Cole's wagon, Tommy skipping ahead, clutching a tin cup of lemonade. Whispers rippled. Everyone had heard of Rand Pike's failed claim. Rand himself leaned near the blacksmiths, his bruised pride simmering like a storm cloud. But this time he was alone. No hired hands, no swagger. Just a man whose grip on power had slipped. Cole walked beside her, shoulders square but calm, as if daring anyone to challenge the truth they carried. At the mercantile porch, Della stopped. She had brought something with her, her folded letter, written in the dim firelight of Cole's cabin. She climbed the step, unfolded it with trembling fingers, and read aloud. Her voice shook, but she didn't falter. My name is Della Rose. I was sold for half a bottle of whiskey, and for too long I believed that was all I was worth. But I am not a debt. I am not a bargain. I am a sister, a woman, and today I claim my own life back. The street hushed. Even Rand's smirk faltered. Della lowered the paper, tears hot in her eyes, and added, And I will build that life, with those who treat me as equal, not as property. Cole stepped forward then. He placed a small packet in her hand. Seeds from his garden. For planting, he said, voice steady. So you'll always know you've got roots here, if you want them. Della looked down at the seeds, then back at him. The kindness in his gaze undid the last of her walls. She drew a breath, lifted her chin, and spoke so all could hear. Then I'll plant them. With you. Tommy cheered, clapping his tin. Cups of lemonade splashed down his shirt. Laughter rose from the crowd, soft, approving, the kind that washed away shame. Rand spat in the dust and stalked off, his boots striking hard, but the town did not follow him. They watched Della instead, some nodding, some smiling faintly. She realized then that belonging wasn't just found in one man's cabin. It could grow in the soil of a whole community, if she dared to sow it. Weeks later, Della pressed the first green shoots into the earth by Cole's porch. Tommy watered them carefully, and Cole built a small fence around the patch. As the sun sank in gold ribbons across the prairie, Della felt something she had long thought lost: peace. She wasn't the girl sold in a saloon anymore. She was a woman who had chosen, who had stood, and who had been seen for more than her scars. Cole's hand brushed hers as they watched the garden together, and she knew she had found not just shelter, but love. If Della Rose's courage and heart touched something quiet and true inside your soul, make sure to like, subscribe, and ring the bell. Out here in the Wild West, love may be hard won, but it's always worth the fight. Join us for more stories of grit, sacrifice, and hearts that endure against all odds.